What is your least favorite thing about each FromSoft game? We're here to learn what those might be via video by Ember. I remember watching this guy quite a bit back. I think he used to have really obnoxious intros and then he stopped after a while. So let's see what he has to say about what the worst feature is in every FromSoft game, or every Souls game, I suppose. Unfortunately, I don't have Demon Souls, I don't have Bloodborne, so I'm gonna have to skip those sections. I don't know anything about it. And unfortunately, it doesn't sound like we're getting a Bloodborne PC port anytime soon, so my personal least favorite thing about Dark Souls 1 is the skeleton dogs in Tomb of the Giants. That's it. I just hate that they even exist. Moving on.
Moving on to Dark Souls, we have the unfinished areas, aka basically the second half of the entire game.
I don't understand this criticism. I don't get it. I don't get it. Where is this coming from? Did the wonder of the world suddenly just disappear after you beat Ornstein and Smo and got to teleport? Like, is that really what happened? Is that what happened for all of you? Because I do not understand. You're climbing a tower. Where could it possibly come back at for Duke's Archives? Where could it come back at? Like, it can't be interconnected forever. Even Elden Ring, with all of its openness, does not interconnect forever. There are final areas. There are boss rooms that end a particular journey. And there is limited interconnectivity. I have never understood this criticism. I don't understand it. I really don't. I try to, but aside from some decisions made about Lost Izalith, I don't understand. Except the skeleton dogs. I hate those.
I could talk about the clunky gameplay due to no omnidirectional rolling, meaning you can only roll in 4 directions, but that's a problem you can get used to.
You can, and you should. Just lock off, bro. It's not that big a thing. Just lock off. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. My precious maidenless tarnished. Miyazaki is not going to come kill you if you lock off.
What I can't get used to is how weak the areas after Anor Londo are compared to the first half of this game. I don't think many people will disagree here, and I really don't think the whole second half is bad. It's just very clear it was rushed and doesn't have the same magical interconnectivity that the first half did.
Again, you can't interconnect forever. It's a linear open level kind of game. It's not an open world, it's interconnected levels. There's only so far you can go, even because like if you just keep going in a circle and like the whole world is kind of just in this circle, it eventually just kind of stops making sense, right? Because then like, so if Gwyn is so accessible, why do we have to do all this crap? What if he's like a wall away? Why don't we just? Oh, there's a whole bunch of logical and gameplay stuff you could go into. Eventually it had to end, so you can't just have interconnectivity all the time. And even then, I think New Londo Ruins does connect back to the Valley of the Drake, so it's not the whole second half. Like, Sif's boss room doesn't go backwards, like, down to the Hydra or something. It just doesn't work like that.
Ending such an incredible first half with Anor Londo and Ornstein and Smo as the boss, it was pretty disappointing getting Lost Izalith with the Bed of Chaos to follow it.
But Lost Izalith
is
a different story.
Miyazaki even apologized for that one.
Who gave me the most trouble? All of them, right? That's the truth. There were quite a few when deadlines were closing in and I couldn't get a good mental image of what I wanted. But we had to settle on something. Those situations were the hardest because I knew something was wrong, but couldn't express what I wanted and couldn't give a solution. That was difficult, both for me and the artist I was working with. I suppose the Bed of Chaos is the principal example of this. Lost Izalith is the ultimate rushed area. It's not so much the enemies, it's the enemy placement. It's copy-pasting Taurus demons. It's not that Taurus demons in the demon ruins are exactly out of place, but the way they're put in the level is just so bizarre looking. It's just so copy-pasted. It's so lazy looking. I don't know. At least you get good rewards if you can make it past the lava, I suppose.
But like I said, some of the areas and bosses were still decent, but we also got areas such as the Tomb of Giants. I know there's a quest you can do to get...
I like Tomb of the Giants. It's just that the skeleton dogs... Skeleton dogs. Skeleton dogs.
I know there's a quest you can do to get the Sunlight Maggot helmet for this area, but it honestly doesn't...
But that's the thing, you don't have to do the quest. You don't have to do the quest. You don't have to give 30 humanity to Quaidloc's sister. You can literally just reach the Bed of Chaos, go around back to where that door starts, and then get the Sunlight Maggot there. A bit misleading, but whatever, not that big of a deal. And there is a chance for a noob to find a light source for Tomb of the Giants, right? It's not like, oh, a noob's never going to know this stuff. Like, no, that's not really the case. So I don't consider that much of a criticism.
Make it too much better. I will say they have some pretty fun bosses like Gravelord Nito and
Gwyn,
Nito. So maybe I'll just consider the weakness to be the level design in the second half. On the bright side, the DLC revived this issue and kept me from going hollow, but it still doesn't justify the ceaseless discharge.
See, I don't like that take either. The DLC didn't revive interconnected level design. I'm not sure where he's getting that statement. It's more like Dark Souls 3 interconnected levels. Like, they're not exactly interconnected with any particular purpose other than not being extremely painful. Like, when you get to the town of Uldasil and you find a shortcut, are you ever going to really use the shortcut again? It's more like just cutting your trip from the bonfire down, but it doesn't interconnect actual areas. That's not even a pro for the DLC. I love the DLC, don't get me wrong, but that's not even... That statement makes zero sense. I don't know what he's even talking. That did not revive the issue. If anything, it turned into Dark Souls 3 level design, which again, not terrible. I like the DLC. It's fine for the DLC to be linear, but it did not revive the issue. Dark Souls 2. What do we think he's going to say about Dark Souls 2?
Anyway, moving on to one that's a bit more juicy, we have Dark Souls 2. While I'm tempted to say the worst part of this game is the adaptability stat, I have to say that it's the boss runs. They're awful. A lot of people have complained.
I think I agree, ultimately. I think you can always memorize a gang squad, but sometimes those boss runs, man, especially Iron Keep, ooh, yikes. It's painful. It's painful. Sometimes some areas are more painful in old Dark Souls 2, and then some are more painful in Scholar. It's a whole thing. I do agree, the boss runs are pretty bad. Fortunately, some of the bosses in these boss runs are terrible. Like, Shrine of Amana, you'll probably only have to go through once, because you're basically just fighting a depressed frog over there at the end. And if you get killed by the depressed frog, you deserve to go hollow. But I do agree with him on this one. I do think that the boss runs, in general, are the worst parts. Because honestly, some of the worst ganks in the game are the boss runs. If that weren't the case, maybe the gank squads in general or adaptability would probably be the worst thing, but I agree with Ember.
It's about enemy placement in this game, or how tons of them randomly get...
Okay, you can't expect to swing with that big old giant axe at this quarter of the wall and expect to get away with it. The footage that YouTubers use sometimes is hilarious. Making them look stupid, but he's also right.
Thrown at you in groups, but the worst part is that they do this on your way to the bosses as well. The run to the blue smelter demon in the DLC was without a doubt the most ridiculous and unfun
I think that's the worst run in the
entire series. You have to run through an area that makes you slower while you get shot at by archers, accompanied by as many basic enemies as they could possibly throw at you.
I agree.
And the worst part is,
I think it's the worst boss run in the game.
Boss with delayed moves to throw.
I think I'd honestly rather go through Frigid Outskirts than keep trying to run through the blue smelter. At least in Frigid Outskirts, you can have like a little army following you. I don't know.
You off, and it's something you paid for. I get that they wanted to push the boundaries of difficulty a bit in this game, but
for the wrong reasons. But yes, they were trying to push boundaries.
Not the way to do it. Sir alone has an
Definitely
infamous
not.
boss run too, with tons of enemies chasing you and shooting fireballs at you the whole way through. It's almost impossible to make it to the boss without taking
big old fireball toads.
It got to the point where I was shaking every time I was close to beating a boss, but not from the thrill of finally being close to winning.
Ooh, that
it was out
hitbox.
of fear that I might.
Oof! Someone hit me with that oof sound effect. Thank you.
Have to run all the way back again. Even if you do manage to run past all the enemies and beat the boss, they never de-aggro, so as soon as the fog wall disappears when the boss is dead, they all rush in at once and continue chasing you.
I don't think I've seen that. I don't think I've beaten Sir alone a couple times. I've never seen that personally. Oh no. I just remembered what the worst boss run in the game is. Oh no. The Dark Lurker. Oh. So that I don't go hollow this early in my channel's lifespan, I'm going to completely forget I just said that.
I don't know if this was as big of a problem for anyone else, but this was without a doubt the most frustrating part of this game for me, and makes me not want to play through certain parts again.
I think
the only reason
because honestly, if something is painful both with and without adaptability, it probably sucks.
Didn't say adaptability is because in my first playthrough, I didn't even know I was supposed to level it, and while it was a pain in the ass, I got used to it. A little bonus for this section is the frigid outskirts.
And you can technically build around it, right? If you don't level adaptability, if you see that your dodge is basically doing nothing the entire time, you could be like, okay, well, if I can't dodge anymore because FromSoft has just lost their marbles, I'll go for a shield build. Or I'll go for something that does not go for heavy armor, you know, you could build around that. I don't actually know if shields are viable in Dark Souls 2. I have yet to try that one. I've tried shields in 1, 3, Elden Ring. Have not tried 2 yet, as of the recording of this video.
That's really all I have to say. If you played the DLC, you know what I'm talking about. I'm
For
happy
yeah.
at least it wasn't required, but as a Souls player, I want to beat everything, especially if I paid extra for it. Dark Souls 2 is still an amazing game. I just think its flaws are much more clear than the other games. Moving on to King Bloodborne.
I can't talk about Bloodborne. No! I can't talk about Bloodborne. I don't have it. I don't have a PlayStation, bro. Someone help me. I'm kind of curious what you had to say about Bloodborne, but I also don't want to like ruin anything for myself. I kind of already know enough about the game as is. Anyways, let's move on.
About it by now, please just remaster the game from Soft. Next up, we have Dark Souls 3. My reason here is going to contradict myself from other
Dark
videos,
Souls 3?
but it's the linear level design. This wasn't a huge problem for me personally, but
I almost agree. That's my second least favorite thing about Dark Souls 3. I'll talk about my first one when we are done hearing Ember's explanation for it.
The level quality also suffered a bit as a result of this. Meaning, most of the levels in the beginning weren't great, and I think at least if they had a bit more branching paths and shortcuts, they would
get it branching because they're hitting it with branches.
and a bit more enjoyable. I don't have a problem with the levels being more straightforward since I found myself lost a lot in the other games.
I don't mind it. I'd mind it even less if it weren't for my main complaint.
But I didn't like how much they strayed away from their original level design philosophy. I think they picked it up a bit after Abyss Watchers, but it was just hard for me to enjoy the lesser quality levels knowing there weren't really any other paths to take. Aside from this, I have to mention the fan service since I know a lot of people were upset about this when the game first came out. I didn't have a ton of it.
Fan service? Yeah, it's like referencing Dark Souls 1 a lot. Like, who really cares? Like, do y'all honestly give a crap about that? Like, I saw a comment that really illustrated this properly. It's like, the whole Dark Souls series is about loops. It's about going back to where you started and having to face those consequences, face those choices all over again. And I think, thematically, referencing Dark Souls 1 a lot in Dark Souls 3 is actually a pretty good decision. Stylistically.
Issues with it, but Dark Souls 3 was also the first Souls game I played. Going back, I can see how people were annoyed by this, but I think it was a really good way to end the Dark Souls series, and the DLC more than made up for it. I do think it was a little bit too easy to R1 spam through most of the basic enemies as well, but it didn't really hurt the game too much, especially...
Yeah, I think it did hurt the game, and I'll tell you why in a second.
Especially since the bosses weren't affected by this. I think it's probably the best starter Souls game for a newbie, maybe even more so than Elden Ring, and it just kind of felt like that's what they were going for.
Nope, absolutely not. That is false. Stop saying that. It is not the best for a noob. I would rather a noob play Elden Ring than Dark Souls 3. I'd rather them play Dark Souls 2 than Elden Ring. Dark Souls 1, Demon Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne, any of those games other than Dark Souls 3, and I will tell you why. My least favorite thing...
The build variety sucks.
I cannot stand trying to use a weapon, and it sucks. I can't stand trying to use a spell, and it sucks. I cannot stand trying anything except for R1 spamming a semi-powerful weapon, and it sucks. I hate Dark Souls 3 build variety. It doesn't exist. There is no build variety. I've tried builds. They seem to all suck every time. The shield build probably had to be the most painful thing I ever tried in a Souls game because it was just, or a build at least. The most painful thing I've ever tried was Dark Souls 2 level 1. The shield in Dark Souls 3 made me want to gouge my eyes out. It was terrible. Surprisingly, the Black Knight shield worked really well against Abyss Watchers for some reason, but other than that, the game has no build variety, I swear. And mix that in with having to go to the exact same locations every time, like we're playing a freaking board game or something. The whole game just isn't very good. I don't like Dark Souls 3. Bosses are okay, but not enough for me to torture myself with using the same playstyle over and over and over again. I cannot stand when people say, oh, this is the best one for noobs. This is the best one for... No, shut the crap up, you're wrong. I'm sorry, I try not to be that direct, but man, that irks me. That I am irked. Consider me irked.
Also, since it was the one that got me into the series, it's hard for me to hate on it too much. Moving on to my precious baby, we have Sekiro. This is honestly the closest thing we've ever had to a perfect game, in my opinion. Because I agree. I really can't think of anything wrong with it. I know a lot of people have issues with the lack of build variety and the game forcing you to play a specific way, but the game just wouldn't work with anything else. I do wish they added at least a few different weapons, even if they were just for New Game Plus, like the spears that some of the enemies have.
I would agree with that, but to be honest, man, the game centers so strongly around that katana. If they gave us a different weapon, it would completely mess with our senses. I know it. And yeah, anyone who says build variety is an issue, do not understand what they purchased. They don't know what they're getting into. Dark Souls is an RPG with action mechanics. Sekiro is an action game with a couple of RPG mechanics sprinkled in there. You got like the skill tree, you got items to find, and things like you could kind of form play styles ish, sort of, even though some abilities are kind of just way better than others. But I do agree, Sekiro is so close to perfect. Like, dude, it is peak gaming.
But this didn't bother me too much. Like I said in the previous video, a super heavy strength build or magic in this game just wouldn't work due to the flow of combat. The real biggest problem I have with this game is more of a personal thing, but if you'd rather me point out a specific problem, I could say the spirit emblems because I think they should just be free. Finding these in the world is a pain, and money isn't super easy to come across if you want to buy them, and not to mention the price actually goes up the more you buy. This made me not want to experiment with...
The price going up the more you buy... Yes, might be an issue, but I don't think they should have been free. I think I disagree with that a little bit.
Prosthetic tools.
I see what he's going after, though.
As much because I was too concerned about.
I know what he's saying.
Spirit emblems. And it's not like you can use an infinite amount of these. I believe you can only get a max of like 20 per life.
Yeah,
so it doesn't make
like that.
sense why you would need to buy them. That's more of a nitpick, and I'm sure they had their reasons. But my real issue with this game is the learning curve. It is impossible to get anyone into this game without them completing basically the first half, and then it just starts to make sense.
I don't agree. I think he is kind of nitpicking a little bit, but he is true. I had to restart the game like 3-4 times just until it finally clicked. Like, man, I like the Star Wars Jedi games, but they ain't got nothing on Sekiro. Sekiro was like built for this mechanic. That was like, what's that quote from Bane? Like, you merely adopted the combat. I was born in it, molded by it. But the game is so good, I think you kind of have to reach a little bit. I don't agree with the fact that you had to reach. I think he's not wrong in that sense. I find it kind of funny that he had to go that far down.
It might be because I couldn't get out of my button mashing habit from the other Souls games, but it took me 3 attempts of trying this game for me to finally get into it. And even then, the combat didn't click for me until I'd beaten the entire game, even though they're clearly trying to push you to use the right approach throughout the entire experience. Like I said, this is a super personal thing, but for some reason it's hard to understand what people mean when they say it's a rhythm game until later, which prevents so many people from experiencing
also, the people saying it's a rhythm game is kind of how I was able to get back into it, man. So many people were clamoring how good it was. I was like, I gotta get into it, bro. I gotta get into it. No. My least favorite thing in Sekiro, I think, is the first couple of bosses. Not specifically the first few, like, in order. But there's some bosses they throw at you kind of early that make no sense to put in front of a new player. That ogre especially is like, bro, no, that is not a good teaching moment for the player. And there's 1 or 2 more. The Raging Bull and the Ogre are terrible bosses to put that early in the game. Terrible. They don't even adapt to Sekiro's mechanics. They're not even like built for Sekiro's systems. It's kind of like encouraging you to like run away in a certain weird pattern. I really don't like those 2 bosses. I think they really should have been later in the game. You could have made the Ogre stronger to compensate a little faster, but those are not good beginner bosses to put that early in the game. I hate them. And yeah, they can be beaten relatively easily by an experienced player, but I still don't like how early they are in the experience. They threw me for a loop.
Speaking of masterpiece, why not say hello to Elden Ring? This one was tough because while I've discussed my gripes with Elden Ring in the past, there really wasn't one big thing I think they did the worst. But then I realized there definitely is, the difficulty balance. And hear me out,
I agree. Probably not for the same reasons, though.
That it's too easy or too hard. I actually think it's both of these. The worst part about Elden Ring, in my opinion, is the inconsistency of difficulty through bosses and areas. And to be fair, since it's open world, there's not really any solution for this. It's just one of the negatives that come with these types of games.
True.
I found myself incredibly disappointed when I went through a dungeon I didn't find until the later game just to one-shot the boss in 3 seconds. It would have been cool if enemies and bosses scaled with your level a little bit, but then it would have defeated the purpose they created for new players to be able to leave and...
Oh, just the idea of scaling Elden Ring. Oh. Imagine you got level at 200 and then Melania scaled with you. Oh, that would be so painful. Oh, imagine if Melania scaled with you. Oh, no! Malekith. The Godskin duo. Oh, that would be terrible. Oh no. That's a terrible idea. Don't make anything scale with you. I don't think that has anything to do with it, to be honest. I think the reason the difficulty is an issue is because it is so easy to miss things, even if you are trying to explore, that you may just be stuck on a boss and it's not even particularly your fault. If you miss the one cave, for example, if you want to level up your weapon early game before you fight Margit, there's a cave very close to the very early starting camp area, but depending on your hardware, this is a really weird thing, but it might not look like a cave entrance until you get close enough to it. But if you look at it and say, oh, that's just part of the mountain structure or the geography, you might just miss the cave and never get those upgrade materials. I know that's a really weird point to make, but it's so easy to miss crap in this game that the game can be hard and it's not even your fault. And I hate how they linked the difficulty directly into the crap you find around the world. It's not that it's not possible to do it that way, but I think the upgrade materials especially like really hurt the experience. Like, you'll just always be missing upgrade materials at some point in time, and it's so frustrating.
Come back when they're a higher level. But the problem with the difficulty goes both ways. There are extremely broken weapons in the game that make it significantly easier, and some weapons that aren't.
But again, you have to know where to find that, and odds are you probably won't, right? Odds are you probably won't know where the broken thing is at, or if you do know where the broken thing is at, you probably won't have the right levels for it. You'll go into that cave in Caelid, you'll find the Moon Veil, and you'll think, oh, well, I don't have the intelligence to use this, I'll just throw it away. You'll find Rivers of Blood, oh, I don't have the Arcane because I'm running a strength build, I'll throw it away, right? You don't know things unless you look them up. You basically gotta look everything up about Elden Ring.
Even really viable. Nothing in this game is a challenge if you use Rivers of Blood the whole way through, but that's fine, that's your choice. The real problem.
Yeah, it is your choice. I like when Souls games at least give you the option to be overpowered if you are willing to do the research. I like that. It makes it feel more gamey. It kind of makes it feel more funny. I don't know.
Problem is the spirit summons, another thing that is supposedly your choice, but not really. Do you think they designed the Godskin duo assuming everyone would want to fight them fairly and get stomped on over and over, or do you think they designed them?
But again, the game does give you ways to deal with them one-on-one. I'm not saying that the Godskin duo was fair. Don't misinterpret that. But they give you abilities to not use spirit summons. It is possible, whether you're using magic, maybe you're doing a rot and run kind of situation, probably more difficult than required. But you know, there are, or shield build. I just did a shield build and wrecked both their faces. It is possible to beat them without spirit summons. But again, you kind of have to know how to do it ahead of time. You kind of just have to cross your fingers and hope your build just so happens to coincide with that. And also, even if you do respec, you better hope you have a good weapon to go with that respec, right? And you wouldn't respec if you didn't know it was good. So it's a terribly vicious cycle. I hate it. That's the one thing I hate about Elden Ring.
In hopes that you would use a summon. That's why the difficulty balance feels a bit strange sometimes, because you feel more forced to use items to help you than you normally would. This wasn't a huge issue in Elden Ring, but it was definitely the worst.
It does feel less, oh, I can skill my way through this boss than most games do.
First aspect of that game.
Not the worst thing that you have to go find stuff, but it's bad that it's reliant on it. That was Ember's takes on the worst features in each Souls-like game. Do you agree with him? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with both of us? Do you think we're both idiots? Are we hollow? Are we maidenless tarnished? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for going hollow with me today, and tune in for more Ashen insights in the future. Don't you dare go hollow.